My parents sent me to military school for being too emotional. I came back to bury them and read the will. He's not even our real son. Don't give him anything. I hadn't seen them in over 15 years. That's how long it had been since they sent me away to military school. I was 14, too emotional, too sensitive, they said, a burden they couldn't bear anymore. So they shipped me off to some place designed to re-educate me. Some place where boys like me were broken down until there was nothing left but a perfect soldier. A soldier who didn't cry, didn't care, and didn't feel. I thought the moment I arrived I'd fight it. Fight the rules, the discipline, the harsh treatment. But it wasn't long before I realized I had no choice. It wasn't survival of the fittest, it was survival of the numbest. I could either turn off every piece of me that made me human or become invisible. So I did. Now standing in front of their casket, I couldn't feel a thing. My heart was stone, my face expressionless. The funeral was a spectacle, a performance of grief that didn't belong to me. The whole town had shown up, neighbors, relatives, friends they had made after I was gone. All of them speaking in hushed tones, all of them staring at me with pity. But I didn't care. The years of being ignored, of being discarded, had made me immune to their judgment, to their sympathy. I didn't need their pity. I hadn't been invited back for a single birthday. Not when I graduated. Not when I enlisted. I'd only received one letter from them in all these years. It had arrived the day I graduated from military school, saying they were proud of my accomplishments. Well, more proud of the soldier I had become, I suppose. And now here I was, standing in front of their graves, looking at a bunch of strangers pretending to mourn them. What did they think I'd feel? Did they expect me to cry? To feel sadness for people who never gave me a chance to be anything but a disappointment? I couldn't bring myself to feel any of that. Instead, I remembered the last day I saw them. My mother's cold, indifferent eyes as she handed me my suitcase and shoved me out the door. My father's gruff silence as he drove me to the train station. Their words had been harsh, but their actions were worse. They had thrown me away. I was just another burden to them. Go. Maybe you'll learn how to be a man, my father had said, his voice as emotionless as his face. Those words echoed in my mind now, louder than anything the preacher said during his sermon. And as the casket was lowered into the ground, I stood there like a statue, cold, unmoving. I didn't shed a tear. I didn't even think about it. They were gone, and it didn't matter. I watched as the crowd slowly dispersed after the service. The whispers followed me everywhere, like shadows at my heels. Look at him, someone murmured. He's not even upset. Another voice added, after all those years, he doesn't even care. But the truth was, I couldn't care less about what they thought. I had buried my parents a long time ago. I had buried the idea of them, of their love, of their approval. All those years of being sent away, of not being wanted, had taken away any possibility of love from them. When I walked away from their gravesite, I didn't feel the loss. I felt relief. I had always been alone, even when they were alive, and now the world could know it. I didn't stay at the graveyard for long. There was no need to. My parents had long since cast me aside, and now their bodies would be buried beneath the dirt, just like the idea of a family I had once hoped for. There was nothing to hold on to anymore. As I walked away from the funeral, a car pulled up beside me. It was the lawyer, someone I barely recognized, but he had been the one to handle my parents' estate. I hadn't expected this. The will reading was set for later that day. I hadn't even considered that it might affect me in any way, but as he handed me an envelope with my name on it, I felt the smallest twinge of curiosity. I stared at the envelope for a long time, my fingers shaking slightly as I held it. Maybe it was just a formality. Maybe the will was just a piece of paper that didn't matter to me anymore. But as I tore it open and saw the lawyer's name, I knew something was coming, something I couldn't ignore. Mr. Pearson, the lawyer began, his tone professional but distant, I'd like to invite you to the reading of the will. It's important we go through this together. I nodded, unsure what to expect. Was there anything left to inherit? Was there anything they had left me at all? And what would it mean if there wasn't? I didn't expect much when I sat down in that small, cold office. It smelled like old leather and paper, the kind of room where documents and secrets had been kept for decades. The lawyer, a stiff, balding man in his late 50s, adjusted his glasses and looked at me as if he were about to hand me something simple, something forgettable. But the moment he opened the envelope, something in the air shifted. I couldn't quite place it, but a chill settled into the pit of my stomach. "Mr. Pearson, the reading of the will begin now," he said with a sense of finality. I sat back in the chair, trying to keep my face neutral, but inside I was already steeling myself. Whatever it was, I didn't care. It didn't matter anymore. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to read aloud in his stiff, rehearsed tone. "I, Richard Pearson, being of sound mind and body, declare this to be my last will and testament." The words were formal, expected. I barely listened. He went on to detail various assets, properties, stocks, funds, all of it directed toward charity or allocated to distant relatives I barely knew. I had no claim on any of it, and I hadn't expected to. But then came the part that made my blood run cold. "To my son, Michael Pearson, you have shown yourself to be unworthy of our family. Your emotional instability has led to countless difficulties for us, and I cannot, in good conscience, leave you anything. You are not and have never been the son we had hoped for. You will receive no inheritance, no property, no wealth." I froze. The words felt like a punch to the gut, surprising but somehow not unexpected. They were cold, calculated, almost final, as though my entire existence had been reduced to a statement of failure. The lawyer's eyes shifted toward me, but I didn't look at him. I couldn't. He cleared his throat again and continued reading, his voice growing more somber as he reached the end of the document. "In the event of my passing, the inheritance will be given to the following individuals: Mrs. Helen Jakes, my longtime friend and confidant, and to a lesser extent, to my cousin Richard Lawrence. But all that remains for you, Michael, is your last name." My chest tightened. It wasn't even the sting of rejection anymore. It was the finality, the total lack of understanding. They had written me off entirely. I wasn't even a disappointment to them anymore. I had never been their son at all. I didn't look at the lawyer. I couldn't. The words were like a void, sucking up every shred of my identity. The lawyer finished reading, his voice trailing off as the finality of it all settled in. The silence in the room was thick, and for a moment it felt like I had gone deaf. It was all I could hear, the absence of anything left for me. There was no inheritance, no family, just this cold, biting truth that I had been completely erased from their lives. "Mr. Pearson," the lawyer said, his voice softer now, perhaps sensing the storm brewing inside me. "I understand this is difficult, but there is something else." I raised my head, forcing my eyes to meet his. "What?" I asked, my voice tight with barely restrained anger. He hesitated, then pulled another document from the envelope, one that seemed less formal than the last. This one had a different handwriting, a familiar, almost comforting script that I recognized immediately. It was my grandfather's. "To my dear grandson, Michael," the lawyer read aloud, "I've watched you from a distance all these years, knowing how your parents treated you. You've been abandoned, neglected, misunderstood. But I have not forgotten you. I never will. You are my blood, and I have kept a secret all these years. Your inheritance will not come from your parents, who have turned their backs on you. It will come from me." I sat up straight, my heart skipping a beat. My grandfather, my mother's father, had never been part of my life. He had distanced himself from the family long ago, and I had only heard rumors about him. Some said he was ill. Others said he was dead. But this changed everything. "I have been quietly working to undo the wrongs done to you. You are entitled to what your parents have hidden from you. I have made sure that, when the time comes, you will inherit what they have tried to take from you. The land, the money, the property, everything." I couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was spinning, like the ground was giving way beneath me. I had nothing, and yet, now I had everything. The words swirled in my mind, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a promise, one of justice, of reckoning. "But know this," the letter continued, This inheritance is not just money or material wealth. It is your right to reclaim what is yours. Your right to confront the people who discarded you. To close this chapter with the kind of resolution that only comes from revenge. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. This wasn't just a financial windfall. This was a chance to right the wrongs that had been done to me, a chance to confront them, a chance to finally close the chapter of my childhood, to bury the past in the only way I could, with finality. The lawyer sat there waiting for my response, but I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run out of that office and burn everything down. But what good would that do? What would it change? Instead, I stood up, carefully folding the documents in my hands, trying to steady myself. "I'll take it," I said, my voice colder than I intended, "and I'll make sure it's done right." I turned to leave, but the lawyer stopped me with a final, lingering word. "Mr. Pearson," he said softly, "you may want to consider how you use this inheritance. Your family will not go quietly into the night?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They never had the power to silence me. And now I was going to take everything from them that they had ever taken from me. The night was colder than usual, a chill creeping through the window as I sat at my desk. The room was dim, the faint light of the street lamp outside casting long shadows against the walls. The only sound was the soft scratching of my pen as I scribbled down my thoughts. Thoughts that had been eating away at me ever since I left the lawyer's office. I couldn't stop thinking about that letter from my grandfather. It was like a lifeline thrown into the storm of my life, but now it felt heavier, like a chain I couldn't escape. The promise of revenge was intoxicating, but it also felt hollow. What was I supposed to do with all of this? My mind churned, but the answer eluded me. There was still so much I didn't understand. I glanced at the stack of papers on my desk, documents detailing the inheritance, the properties, the bank accounts. I wasn't ready to deal with any of it yet. What I needed more than anything was to know my next move, and that answer, I realized, had to come from the past. I reached for the old wooden box hidden in the back of the drawer, one I hadn't opened in years. It was a small, unremarkable thing, but inside it lay the remnants of my connection to my grandfather. Letters, old photographs, a few cherished mementos that reminded me of the man who, despite his distance, had always believed in me, unlike my parents. I opened the box, the familiar scent of old paper and ink filling the air. I sifted through the contents, each item a testament to a time long gone. Finally, my fingers closed around the last letter I had ever received from him. I remembered the day he sent it, on my 14th birthday, just before my parents had sent me off to military school. The last bit of contact I'd had with him before he disappeared from my life. I unfolded the letter carefully, the yellowed paper crackling in my hands. The handwriting was unmistakable, the loops and curves of my grandfather's script familiar, even comforting. "My dear Michael," the letter began, "I know things are difficult for you right now, and I cannot pretend to understand the pain of your situation. I wish I could be there to guide you, but life has its own way of pulling us in different directions. Your parents, they are not bad people, but they are broken in ways that you may never fully understand. I have seen the way they treat you, and it breaks my heart. But I want you to know this. There is more to you than they see. You are more than they will ever understand." I paused, feeling a tightness in my chest. He had always been the only one to truly see me, to understand the emotional turmoil I carried within. My parents had never seen it. They had seen weakness, not depth. They had seen an inconvenience, not a son. But my grandfather, he had seen me. "You are my blood, Michael, and blood runs deep. One day you will learn that the family name carries weight, but it also carries chains. Your inheritance will not come from your parents. I will make sure of that. But there is one thing I need you to understand before it's too late." The words blurred in front of me as I fought back the sudden surge of emotion. This letter, this letter was my last connection to him, to someone who truly cared for me. I hadn't seen him in years, and yet he had been watching over me, silently. The realization hit me hard. He had always been there, even when I had felt completely alone. I continued reading, my fingers trembling as I turned the page. "Your parents may not understand you, but they do not have the right to define you. I have made arrangements. I will make sure that when the time comes, you will be able to reclaim what they've taken from you. But remember this, revenge is not the same as justice. And the true power will come when you can look them in the eye and do what they never thought you could. I felt a cold wave of understanding wash over me. Revenge, he said, but not just any revenge. It would be something calculated, something deliberate, something that would prove to them, no to everyone, that I was not the weak, emotional child they had cast aside, that I was more than they had ever given me credit for. But the real question now was, how would I use this newfound power? My grandfather had given me the means, but I had to decide what to do with it. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing on me, and for the first time in my life, I felt the responsibility of it. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about reclaiming my identity. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the box, locking it away once more. The memory of my grandfather's words hung in the air, a silent promise. He had believed in me when no one else did, and now it was time for me to make them all believe. I spent the next few days buried in paperwork, the inheritance documents becoming more familiar with each passing hour. The properties were vast, far more than I could have imagined. And the money? It was obscene. But none of it mattered. What mattered was what came with it. The power, the leverage, the chance to finally confront the people who had wronged me. But there was one part of the inheritance I hadn't yet touched, the family home. It stood at the edge of the estate, a large, imposing house that had once been a symbol of everything my parents had valued. Luxury, prestige, control. It was also the place where I had spent the last few years of my childhood, a place that felt more like a prison than a home. I knew I had to go back there. I knew it was the next step, the next phase of this slow-burning plan, but I didn't know if I was ready to face it. The house had been empty when I left, my parents gone on their endless travels, busy with their own lives, but now they were gone for good. The funeral had been the first step, the will had been the second, but the real battle, the real reckoning, would come when I stood in that house again. The air outside was heavy, thick with the promise of rain, but the storm inside me was already raging. The inheritance, my grandfather's plan, it all led me here, to this place, to the house I hadn't set foot in since I was 14. A place where I had been nothing but a disappointment, a burden, an emotional outcast. The house loomed in front of me, its dark windows staring down like lifeless eyes. The gate creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing in the stillness. I walked slowly, almost methodically, as if the weight of every step was pulling me deeper into the past. The front door stood just ahead, like a barrier I had to cross to truly close this chapter of my life, to confront what had been left unsaid for so many years. When I reached the door, my hand hesitated on the handle. I could hear the muffled sound of my breath, feel the tightness in my chest. Was I ready for this, for all of it? I didn't know, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. Not after everything I had learned, not after everything that had been taken from me. I pushed the door open, and the musty scent of the house hit me like a slap in the face. The halls were silent, the grand chandelier hanging above me like a relic of a past life. Everything was exactly as I remembered it, perfectly preserved, a monument to my parents' obsession with control. But this time it felt different. This time, it wasn't my parents who held the power. It was me. I walked through the house, each room stirring memories I had long buried. The hallway where I had waited for my parents to come home, the empty kitchen where my mother had scolded me for not being strong enough, the library where my father had lectured me about becoming a man, as if he knew anything about it. But none of it mattered now. The echoes of those days only fueled my resolve. I made my way to the study, the room where my father had always retreated to, where he had made decisions about my future without ever once considering me. The room that held the will, the document that had defined my fate, the room where everything had started. I didn't need anyone to tell me what to do next. I knew what had to be done. The desk sat in the center of the room, imposing, just like my father had always been. The leather chair, worn from years of use, was now an empty throne. The room was still. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall, each second slipping away like sand through my fingers. I stepped forward, my fingers brushing against the edge of the desk. There it was, the will, the final piece of the puzzle. I sat down, feeling the weight of it all settle in. The paper was still fresh, as if the ink hadn't yet dried. I took a deep breath before unfolding it. The words were exactly as I had feared, but they were also exactly what I needed to hear. To my son Michael, the one who never lived up to our expectations. You were always too emotional, too weak. We tried, but we could never make you into the man we wanted. We are sorry it came to this. You are not our real son. You are not deserving of our fortune. To you we leave nothing. The words hit me like a physical blow. It was everything I had expected, and yet it still stung. The confirmation of my parents' cruelty, the final nail in the coffin of any hope I had ever had for their love or approval. But as I read the final lines, something shifted. There at the bottom of the page, in my father's unmistakable handwriting, was a strange addition. This inheritance is not for you, Michael, but you will be taken care of by someone else. The true heir is not you. My heart skipped a beat. The true heir? What the hell did that mean? Before I could process the words further, a noise behind me broke the silence. The door to the study creaked open, and I turned around, my pulse quickening. For a moment I expected to see a ghost, or perhaps a figment of my imagination. But no, it was the lawyer, the one who had handled everything since my parents' death. You should know, he said, stepping inside. This was not just any will. Your parents left you nothing, but there's more. There's another document, one they didn't expect you to find. It's the reason you're really here. I blinked, confused. Another document? What was going on? The lawyer handed me a small envelope, old and yellowed with age. It was sealed with wax, a strange symbol pressed into it. I broke the seal, feeling a chill run through me. Inside there was a letter. No, a message. And as I read it, my blood ran cold. Michael, I know you have been through hell, but what they did to you, what they took from you, it was never yours to lose. You are my true heir. They never knew about this, but I did. And I made sure that the real inheritance would pass to you. My money, my name, everything they stole from you, take it all back. And when you do, make sure they know who you really are. I felt the walls closing in around me, the room spinning. My grandfather, he had planned this all along. The money, the inheritance, the revenge, it was all part of a larger game, a game my parents had never even seen coming. I stared at the letter in my hands, my thoughts racing. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for, not just for the money or the power, but for the chance to show them, to show everyone. I wasn't just some emotional kid they sent away to fix. I was their worst nightmare. I was everything they feared, and now it was time to make them pay.